recording. All right, so first of all, thank you for joining me online. I am right now in Seattle. I can show you my views from the window. This is Seattle, downtown Seattle. Okay. All right, so thank you for joining me. I'm here to attend a conference. We'll be traveling to Portland soon, and today we're going to talk about translanguaging. All right, so in our book, Techniques and Principles in Language Teaching, 3rd edition, Oxford Handbook for Language Teachers by Diane Larson Freeman, and authors. We know that we have a chapter. Wait, let me go back and show you my book. It's right here. Okay, in this book, in each chapter, there is one principle or one major part one principle that we talk about is the role of students' native language. So for each pedagogy, that's what we talk about. Okay. The role of students' native language. Should students be able to use their native language, or do you think we should abandon students' native language altogether? And we talked about this in our first class, right? Okay. So also in which chapter is it? In chapter 2, we talk about grammar translation method. And grammar translation method is the earliest, one of the earliest English teaching, not English teaching, but language teaching method. Because at first, at one time, it was called classical method, since it was first used in teaching of classical language such as Latin and Greek, and not English. And then earlier in the 20th century, grammar translation method was used for the purpose of helping students to read and appreciate foreign language literature. So they used grammar translation method to translate the literature so that it helps students read. So believe it or not, when I was in college at National Jiao Tong University, our literature professor also asked us to translate a little bit of the literature that we're studying. Okay. It was also hoped that through the study of grammar of target language, students would become more familiar with the grammar of their native language, and that this familiarity would help them speak and write their native language better. So that's the basis of grammar translation method. So it also thought the GT method, grammar translation method, also thought that foreign language learning would help students grow intellectually, and it recognizes that students would probably never use the target language, but the mental exercise of learning it would be beneficial anyway, because at the time, Latin and Greek, you don't really speak Latin and Greek. It's mainly for the purpose of studying literature. For them, grammar translation method is more of a mental exercise of learning, and so that's the basis of this approach, this method. All right. So I know So for this week, I would like you to read grammar translation method on your own. It's an easy read. This is a method. It's a very old method that we don't use a lot. Definitely, we won't use it in elementary school. That's not what we use in elementary school. So to better prepare you for the English education now, and especially the introduction of bilingual education, I would like to go over translanguaging and so that you're more familiar with what we believe in right now. So the word translanguaging, can you type up the word translanguaging in the chat, everyone? All right. As we know, we're so you guys, for this hour, you guys can relax. You don't need to open up your camera. I'll just do the talking because I'm gonna quickly go over what translanguaging is. And the way we are going to calculate points for this week is that whoever participated in the chat for answering each question would earn 1 point to the group, and that's how we calculate points. Okay. All right. So please remember to keep track of your points. Right, Shelly, good. Okay. Yes, very good. Very good. Okay. All right. So let me share screen, and while I'm doing lecturing, I will also be asking you questions, and that's how you participate, okay? All right. So can you see this? Okay. All right. So, right now, because of bilingual education, like that, the Ministry of Education is promoting, translanguaging has become a buzzword because right now, it's not just in Taiwan, but in the States, in Europe, people have been adopting and translanguaging lens toward bilingual education. Okay, so let me start off with explaining what translanguaging means. Translanguaging is not translation. Where it's, we don't equate translanguaging to translation. So what does it really mean? If you are familiar with code switching, code switching is a similar term, but totally different basis of theory. Okay, so before I begin, perhaps I should show you in Instagram, if I can log on to my own Instagram. An example of translanguaging. But you might call it code switching, depending on what you believe in, what code switching means. Let me show you my Instagram. Stop sharing before, right? I'm going to show you a tab in my Instagram. Okay, go to my Instagram. Okay, I'm not trying to promote my Instagram, but if you'd like to follow, please do. Can you hear this? Okay, it's not. Okay.
No, you're not human, Mama. No, you're not human, Mama. No, you. not you want mama.
Okay, what is she trying to say?
No, you're not you want mama. No, you're not you want mama.
Can you understand it? Please try to type it in the chat. Let me.
No, you're not you want mama. 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 No, you're not you want mama.
Okay. All right. So the answer is, remember you could see that I typed up Ariana likes mantianxing. So I went to Family Mart and bought mantianxing, and then she opened up that is it chips, not chips, but mantianxing, and then she went on and had fun with her sister, and then her mom started when she saw mantianxing, she started eating it like crazy, and then that's what she said. No, do not 吃完 mama. So it's actually no, do not 吃完 mama. No, with a comma, with an exclamation point. Do not 吃. Oh my God, I can't type. Okay, so I don't need to type. Do not 吃完 mama. So she's asking her mom not to finish or not to eat all her bag of mantianxing, right? She's trying to stop her mom. And she's translanguaging here. Okay. So you could see that she's using both Chinese and English in one sentence. No, do not 吃完 mama. So the reason why she's translanguaging may be because my sister is asking her to only speak Chinese with a family at home, and because she goes to school in kindergarten and she speaks English at school, she comes back and her mom stops her from speaking English because she wants her to be familiar with or comfortable in speaking Chinese, her home language. But she's using both these language resources to communicate, and sometimes she's translanguaging while she conveys what she's trying to say. So this is a very good example of translanguaging, but you might call it code switching. But I believe it's translanguaging, and there's a difference between translanguaging and code switching. Now, the reason why we're studying translanguaging is that for each method, we would talk about whether or not it's okay to use the native language. In her case, the native language would be the home language, would be the mother tongue, and it would be Chinese. But in her setting, she lives in Orlando, so she go to school in Orlando. So she could also say that her native language is English, because schooling in an environment, English, U.S. citizens, for U.S. citizens, their native language is English. All right. So, all right. So let me go back to translanguaging. All right. So for different methods, we have different views of native language, whether or not we use our native language in teaching English. For bilingual education, we believe in translanguaging. So we believe that it's okay for teachers to translanguage, and it's okay for kids to translanguage. All right, and here's some of the reasons why, what research says about our language in the brain and about translanguaging. Okay, let me stop presenting and share my other slide. All right, translanguaging. Okay. So this is basically the content that is covered by Professor Li Wei. He is an esteemed scholar researching translanguaging, and so basically he is saying that we are not bilingual. Although we're bilinguals, but we are not two monolinguals in one brain. All right. So when I'm going over these content, perhaps I would pause and then I would ask you to tell me what you remember, what stuck with you, what do you think is most relevant, what do you agree with, what do you disagree with, okay? So myth one is that bilinguals are not two monolinguals in one brain. The basic fact is that human brain that works for a monolingual, mono means one. Monolingual are people who speak only one language, okay? A bilingual, people who speak two languages, and multilingual, more than two languages, 3, 4, 5, okay, is exactly the same. So this is telling us that although if a monolingual person or a bilingual person, their brain works the same, okay? They're not different. Bilinguals do not have two separate brains, and this is the most important. Sometimes, yeah, we're asked to stick with one language, and in fact, we don't have two separate brains for two different languages. The brain areas for languages are the same. They're growing, we're using the same area for different languages. So we don't have two separate brains or three separate brains. The area of the language processing area in the brain are the same. Are in the same area. So why do we separate? Why do we ask students to limit themselves to stick with one language? Why do you limit the teacher to stick with one language? Well, there's pedagogical purposes or teaching purposes, because we would like to encourage as much, we would like to offer as much input as possible, right? All right, so this is another myth. The role of the L1 meaning our mother tongue, the first language. Somehow we've all been taught that we must forget about our mother tongue when we learn a foreign language. We are forgetting the whole purpose of learning a foreign language is to become bilingual rather than become another monolingual. We don't learn English in order to forget Chinese. So this is saying we shouldn't abandon our L1 altogether. We're not learning English to become a monolingual in English. We're trying to become bilingual. So we shouldn't forget Chinese or the role of Chinese in learning a second language. All right, so this is translanguaging view, okay? All right, but you need to have your own views towards the use of mother tongue in your own classroom. So also we need to know that there are no balanced bilingual. there is no such thing as perfectly balanced bilingual. We don't need to know equal amount of English, Chinese, Japanese, and French. And like last week, we were learning Korean, or so we're learning, when we are learning Korean and learning English, there's no such thing as a balanced bilingual. We don't need to know the same amount of Korean and the same amount of English or the same amount of Chinese. So so there's no such bilingual, no balanced bilingual. And it's okay not to have, like, it's okay that you're learning more in this language and less in the other language, okay? And about the entire language system. No one can learn the entire language system, whether it's the first or second or foreign language. So for me, my native language, Chinese, perhaps I don't have as large a vocabulary in Chinese as you do, okay? So no one can learn the entire language system, whether it's the first language, as for me, Chinese, okay, or second or foreign language like English or Japanese. We don't know every single word in our first language, like I said, okay? We don't know every single expression of that language. We don't even know what we might say or how we might say it in the next sentence. And that's the whole point of linguistic capacity and competence and innovation and linguistic creativity, the translanguaging instinct. And this is saying that what we might say or how we might say it in the next sentence is unpredictable. We're saying it as we think, thinking as we say it. So it's unpredictable. And our linguistic capacity, our competence in innovation and linguistic creativity, these are all the translanguaging instinct. So it's all natural, automatic, and you can't predict it, and it's creative and it's innovative, and you just can't simply ask students to repeat after you, memorize a certain language, grammar, and then try to stick with it, right? So I'm talking a little bit about audiolingual method here, which is the next method that in 2 weeks, right, that we're going to study. All right, so what is the translanguaging instinct? It's that we view language as innovative and creative, and we have a whole linguistic capacity, and it's very flexible, okay? All right, so cognitive-wise, there is no language-only brain, because there's no such thing as a language-only brain area. We don't have a language-only brain area. Language learning cannot be wholly independent of auditory and visual processes. This is saying that our auditory, what we hear and what we see, are not independent of language learning areas. They are connected, okay? So what we hear and what we see is connected to our language learning areas, in the brain. And so language experience and cognitive capacities are closely interrelated and mutually beneficial. So what we think and the language help us with the cognitive capacity, and it's all interrelated, and it's and beneficial to each other. So language is multi-sensory, the senses, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch, the 5 senses. multimodal semiotic system, meaning multimodal. There's different modes. Multimodal is like what you're seeing. You're listening to my lecture, you're reading the text, but you're also looking at the images right here, right? So it's multimodal semiotic, meaning conveying system. Okay, symbols convey, using symbols to convey meaning. These are all symbols. Okay, right, and like these are all symbols, like these. Mental health, using like a heart rate chart. Academic performance and error going up. The dollar sign, preparation for futures. These are all symbols, and these are semiotic system. Okay, they're interconnected with each other, with other identifiable and inseparable cognitive systems. Okay, although we can identify these cognitive systems, but you cannot separate them. So the way we process color or number involves language, which also involves memory, attention, and other areas. That is to say, when we're teaching colors or numbers in English, it also involves memorizing the colors and numbers, or giving attention to these colors or numbers in other areas. Okay. So, here it is. Translanguaging is. So translanguage means transcending the traditional divides between language and non-language cognitive and semiotic systems. Because like we said, language and cognition and semiotic system, they're all interrelated, right? Human communication in everyday life is always multimodal, multilingual, multimodal, and multisensory. So when I'm trying to say something, I'm using my body language to also convey. I'm using these pictures to show you the brain, to show you the different areas, the auditory cortex, where we process what we hear, auditory, the visual cortex, where we process what we see, but it's interconnected with the Wernicke's area, where we understand speech, and so on. So they are different dimensions, but the same process. Memory, attention, emotion, language are dimensions that you can identify, but can't separate. So when we're trying to convey something, our emotions, no, mommy, do not, what did she say? Do not 吃完 mama, right? She's trying to convey her emotions really quickly, but otherwise her mom would finish up all the chips, right? She wasn't thinking when she was trying to convey this. She didn't ask her brain to switch off a certain language. So she's using all her resources in the brain and come up with something that she was trying to tell her mom. Stop eating. Okay, so that's translanguaging there. So here, when we see, when you mention about code switching, and usually code switching is a bad thing in the past, it's because that we're viewing first language and second language as separate, and they shouldn't be mixed together, something like that. But in right now, people are realizing the importance of students' role of first language, and that you can't really separate these two languages. They're all in the same area where you process the language, and it's all your language repertoire. So all the the language capacity, your language resources, it's all in the same area. So it doesn't matter which language you should be able to use all your language resources, right? You can't say I have both hands. No, now you need to tie up your left hand. You can only use your right hand. It goes the same with language. You should be able to use all your language resources to speak the language, to convey meaning. So that's the translanguaging stance. All right. So how do we go about doing this? Basically, here are several classroom implications. Classroom. So LOTES, LOTES, means languages other than English. So right here, this is 2011 Nurturing Student Strengths, the impact of school-based student interpreter program on Latinos and students' reading comprehension and English language development, and reading strategies of bilingual Latino students who are successful English readers, opportunities and obstacles from the Reading Research Quarterly, and biliteracy among children and youth, Reading Research Quarterly. These are heavily based on research. So here are several translanguaging practices. Note-taking in LOTES, which is languages other than English, whilst listening to or reading English text. So you could take notes in other languages while you're listening and reading to English text. And that's translanguaging. Repeating content in LOTES to study for test. So you're repeating the contents in your own language to study for tests. Okay. So in our case, you might want to, what you would do, what some people would do is find a translation version of our textbook, right? And study it, repeating the content. In other words, they've studied it in English, but they're reading it again in their native language. Or drafting writing assignments in LOTES. I don't know, this is not encouraged for English writing class, and we normally don't encourage students to write in Chinese and then translate it into English, but this is a translanguaging practice as well. Okay, making cross-language comparisons when reading. You can compare two different languages, your home language and in English, and that's what grammar translation method teachers do, is that they are aware of cross-language comparisons. They know that this might be an area where your students might make mistakes. Okay, using bilingual dictionaries when learning new vocabulary, that's a translanguaging practice as well. Talking with friends in LOTES to make sense of school assignments. I think that's what we do a lot of times. We talk in Chinese to go over what we should do, but when it comes to presenting, we use English, right? Learning new languages with family and friends, language brokering for family and classmates. That's something that's practiced in the US more. So what about classroom implications? Promote students to discuss challenging or new content in LOTES through think, pair, share activities. So as you know, we're learning, we're promoting bilingual education and learning science in English, learning PE in English, learning 生活 in English, right? So, or 健康 in English, but some of the topics are really, really deep and difficult For example, like managing our emotions. Basically, if you ask students to talk about what do you do when you are angry, and how do you cope with your anger, they are not capable in expressing themselves in English freely enough, right? So in this case, you could prompt students to discuss challenging or new content in LOTS, which is their native language, through think, pair, share activities. Okay. All right, my battery is running low. I need to plug in. And then think, pair, share activities where they think, they pair up and they share their thoughts. Reinforce existing understanding of concepts by asking students to summarize or paraphrase information in their LOTS. In this case, perhaps I should ask you, okay, what did I just say in Chinese? That's a common strategy of translanguaging in the classroom. Also develop students' meta-linguistic awareness through activities that encourage cross-linguistic comparisons, such as translation and cognate instruction. Well, we don't have cognates. Cognates are words that are similar in different languages. For example, in Spanish, computer in Spanish and English are pretty much spelled the same way. So those are cognates, okay? But Chinese and English do not have cognates, okay? But what we can do is develop students' metalinguistic awareness through comparing two different languages, perhaps through translation. But we don't do that. We can't do that in English class, but not in bilingual lessons, right? And to include multilingual text in your classroom library and encourage reading in the native language, the LOTS, multilingual text in the classroom library, meaning you offer the same book with different languages so that you could read in different languages. Okay, establish a constellation of literacy practices that make multilingualism the norm rather than the exception in your classroom. So as an English educator, we would like you to become more flexible and adopt the translanguaging lens, and for students to be able to be multilingual in your classroom, not restricting them in conveying in certain languages, but encourage your students to be able to use all their language repertoire to convey. Have students interview classmates about their language practices, create multilingual word wall. I like the multilingual word wall idea. So just so you know, in the States, perhaps in a classroom, there would be students like six different home languages in one class. So you could create a multilingual word wall for these students and ask them to write it in their own language if they know how to write it. Share some of your own language learning experiences, or discuss with the students the rewards and challenges of their emerging bilingualism. Okay, these are all classroom practices of translanguaging, so that's basically what I'd like to tell you about translanguaging. This is fairly new, but people are talking about translanguaging a lot these days. In the States, there are journals of translanguaging. It's very popular now. And this is not usually covered in our our text, because our texts are like the books that we use, the English teaching methods, they don't cover translanguaging because it's fairly new, and people are now beginning to understand why we should promote translanguaging. All right, so enough of talking for me on my part. We'll still have some time left, so I would like for you to type in the chat, okay, of what is one thing that you strongly agree, that is stuck in your head and that you've learned out of my lecture. We'll start with that one. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. It doesn't have to be a full sentence. It could be a phrase or something that you remember about translanguaging. Right, so please type it in the chat so that I know that that you're participating and for your input. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes as we wait. Doesn't have to be a full sentence. Okay. Really nice. Because our mother tongue for learning the second language good. Learning the other language, we shouldn't abandon our native language. Very good. We can't really separate L1 and L2 since they are the same part in the brain. No, there's no balance learning. Agree with the concept that we don't have an independent language learning area. Right? The role of our L1 also plays an important role when we learn in AL2. The use of language resources in our brain, the language instinct. We don't need to learn languages to an equal extent. Very well said. No language only brain area. Code switching. Okay. When teaching L2, we can also use L1 to help students learn better. Yep. The brain areas for languages are the same. Yes, language can be combined while teaching. Languages is not a bad thing because mother tongue language is also important. It's called switching, but they are still something different. Yes, very different. Here I would like to explain more about translanguaging and code switching. So for code switching, you're basically viewing two languages as separate, right? But for translanguaging, they're viewing languages as one. Like they're all our language resources. We own all of them. They're not separate systems. They're one system. So they're one system coded in one area, the same area of the brain. So I don't know if when you're speaking one language, you need to switch off the other language. So they're also in one area, the same area. So that's why people say that bilingual learners or multilingual learners, they're more flexible in the brain because they have to control over what language they speak. When they speak a certain language, they need to switch off the other language because it's still processing behind. So translanguaging views languages as one, but code switching views different language as separate, so that they're switching to a different language and they're two different things. So this is how different they're basically two different theories. Okay, so it all depends on what you believe in. Learning English doesn't mean that we should forget Chinese. L1 until 2 can be used in the same classroom. No two monolinguals in one brain. Languaging may help students to build a more complex context. The focus is on accuracy, not fluency. The focus is on accuracy, not fluency. Not sure if I mentioned about accuracy and fluency. But I think it's more of a focus on how you convey meaning. Like I said, translanguaging, meaning that it's not just the language, it's also how we convey meaning. We are conveying meaning through our body language, and that's also part of translanguaging. We are conveying meaning through this PowerPoint slides with visuals, with pictures, and that's also part of translanguaging. So these are all languaging. Language used as a verb. Languaging meaning we're using different modes to convey meaning. Okay, so when we talk about translanguaging, it's not just about Chinese and English, but also about body language, about the pictures that you show people, about the videos that you show people, about the actions and what you hear, what you offer, smell. These all are multisensory. These all are part of translanguaging. So when you talk about code switching, they're mainly about different languages, okay? So sometimes we can learn second language based on our mother tongue. Sometimes some of these sentences can be more understandable when you use two languages. All right. Okay, very well done. And I think you have a very beginning basic understanding of what translanguaging means. And I don't know if you have any questions. If you have any questions, you can type it in the chat, or I'm going to post this PowerPoint slide onto our Google Classroom. If you have any further questions, you may ask me there. But this is very new, so we need time to process this. This would make a bit more sense when you start to teach. But it's really difficult for us to decide like how much Chinese or when do we use Chinese, or to help students understand. Like I said, translanguaging is not just the use of Chinese, but how I present meaning to the kids. So when I'm thinking about translanguaging, when I'm teaching how they should brush their teeth, perhaps I use movement. I use a large teeth so that I could show them how to brush their teeth. I could use a PowerPoint slide. I could use a video. And these are all part of translanguaging. In other words, how do we convey meaning to help students make sense of what they hear? Okay, so so I think this could get us thinking about different methods and their views on translanguaging or their mother tongue, okay, and how they would help students understand the language and through what activities or approaches. So please finish up reading grammar translation method this week. And for next week, since this is translanguaging, next week will be bilingual education, a topic on bilingual education. And I will be sharing my video. It's pre-recorded video for next week in Google Classroom. Okay, after you finish watching the video, there are several questions for you to answer. And I think it would be in quizzes. So that's basically our plan. All right. So grammar translation method, please read on your own. I may or provide some questions for you to answer. But next week is bilingual education at CLIL, and it's video-based. We don't need to come online to have an online class. It's asynchronous. All right. Do you have any questions? Questions? All right. Okay. Andy, I've got your email. Thank you for your email. I'm very excited that you wrote me an email and asked me a question about audiolingual method. I'm gonna write you back after class, and really excited when I get back. We're gonna get to know more about audiolingual method. All right. Any questions? If not, please calculate your group scores and put it in the chat here. So just so I know how many points you're earning for each group. So for the points counters, please raise your hands, your virtual hands. Thank you. Really fast. All right, virtual hands. Okay, so go back to the chat. I said for each answer, you earn 1 point to your group for today. Okay. And please type it in the chat. And for COIL project is Utah, you're doing very well leading the whole team on the COIL project. I love your introductions posted in the flip, and also the picture that you posted I saw one picture of two girls. Let me see. And there were introductions posted on Discord. And thank you very much for getting ready to present to students in Switzerland. And I do have two videos for you to watch this week. It's about education in Switzerland. They have pre-recorded the video for us to watch. So I'm going to pass that information to you, perhaps in Google Classroom. So for those who are also interested, you could also watch it as well. Okay. All right. So far, I think we're doing great. And right, I'm without access. I'm trying to get into my Discord. All right, good. Bubbles 8 points, Donkey 6 points, Cuckoo 8 points, 9 points. Anyone missing or absent today? Joe? Huh? What does that mean? I owe 5 points. 3 points? Is it 3 points or 5 points? Yeah, you did. Yeah, you'll need to count, and I'll have my teaching assistant GT count as well, because I would have a record of your chat input. All right. Okay, thank you. Anyone absent? All right. Okay, I won't keep you long, but please read grammar translation method for the next hour, and I think you can finish reading within an hour. Okay. And answer my question on Google Classroom. All right, that's it for today. Thank you very much for your participation. And do we have every group? Evil 12 points. I guess you have 12 points from guessing what Ariana was saying, right? That's very funny. B, D, C, A, B, C, D, E. Where's E? E, F, G, H. There H. I. Okay, we have every group. Thank you. Bye-bye.
拜。
老师，谢谢。
Thank you.
拜拜。
拜拜。
谢谢老师，
拜拜。
拜。
Hi.
老师，
Hey.
不好意思，我是 Utah， 我可以
Hi,
问一下，
Yuta. 当然了。
那个 Koyo 的那个 education system， 我们也是要录影，然后传给他们，对不对
Koyo 的你们的我们的 education system 我们不用传给他们，我们就是那天那个跟他们分享就好了。
就是 meeting 那一天吗？
对 meeting 那天，我们 meeting 那天再分享。
meeting
他们是
一个半
pre-record 哈，
这样时间够吗？
我们不要讲太多，我觉得我觉得那个我们的 education system 就是1-2个 slide 就好了啊，然后
slide 这么少？
对，不用那么多，就是他们就是让他们大概知道怎么样我们的整个体制，然后再来就是着重在那个英语教学的英语学习的部分就好了。对，英语学习的部分，还有你们自己对于自己的教育的想法。
嗯哼，好。
比如说让我就会讲说，we have lots of tests. We have to take tests to get into high school, take tests to get into college. 然后这是就是很不同的 education system, right?
Right.
Just focus on that. And also, like, we start learning English from grade 1, but for some of us, we started learning English from grade 3. Something like that. The national curriculum says we to start learning English from grade 3.
OK，
类似这样子，对。But
那我们也
yeah,
做了一个算是蛮那个完整的一个，就是大家讨论过一个大概从幼稚园到大学的那个，但就不用
哇哦，那如果说你们有做的话，那 pre-record 也很好。你如果有 pre-record 给他们，
好，
你就不用说占用很多时间，然后你们在那个就是那天 kick off 那天啊，就可以就可以聊。
就分享自己的 idea 这样。
对，这样很好。
OK， 好
Thank you so much.
，you
Yay, wonderful, Yuta.
真的要早日康复。
啊，谢谢。你看，
天哪，
我有那个 doctor's 签名。
要留着。
Right, thank you so much.
OK，老师谢谢。
谢谢，拜拜。